You might be watching this after a long day, scrolling quietly, hoping something finally explains why money still feels heavy. Before we begin, gently tap. Like if financial stress has ever followed you into moments that were supposed to feel peaceful. That simple tap helps this conversation reach people who might need calm honesty more than loud financial advice. Leave a comment telling me where you are watching from, because money pressure feels different depending on where life places you. If someone you care about has been carrying silent money stress, sharing this video can be an act of kindness, not judgment. This channel exists for people tired of hype, guilt, and fear-driven money conversations that only increase anxiety. If calm, realistic discussions about money help you breathe easier, consider subscribing for future conversations like this. Tonight, we are talking about a truth many people sense quietly but rarely say out loud. Money matters more than we are usually willing to admit, even when we tell ourselves it should not. Almost everyone says money is not everything, yet almost everything in life quietly depends on it. Let me share a real situation that made this truth impossible for me to ignore anymore. A close friend of mine had a stable job, decent income, and often repeated that money was not important. From the outside, their life looked fine, organized, and responsible without obvious signs of financial trouble. Yet small things kept revealing a different emotional reality beneath the surface. They avoided checking their bank account, even when no major expenses were expected that month. Unexpected bills triggered immediate stress, even when the amounts were manageable on paper. Conversations about money ended quickly, often with jokes or comments minimizing its importance. Whenever money came up, they would smile and say, "Money is not everything, right?" But their body language told a different story, one filled with tension, worry, and quiet exhaustion. What struck me was not their income level, but how much emotional weight money still carried. This contradiction is incredibly common, especially in cultures that morally downplay the importance of money. We are taught that caring too much about money means we are greedy, shallow, or lacking values. So instead, many people choose a safer narrative, pretending money does not matter that much. This denial often feels noble, but it quietly creates confusion and poor financial decisions. When we refuse to admit money matters, we stop planning for it honestly. Without honest planning, stress fills the gap where clarity should exist. Money then becomes a constant background noise, quietly affecting mood, sleep, and relationships. The problem is not that people care about money, but that they feel ashamed for caring. That shame prevents open conversations, even with ourselves, about what we truly need to feel safe. In reality, money is rarely about luxury, status, or showing off for most people. For most households, money represents safety, predictability, and the ability to handle life's surprises. When people say money is not important, they often mean they wish it did not control them. But ignoring its role does not reduce its control, it usually increases it. This is why people with decent incomes can still feel constantly anxious about their finances. The anxiety does not come from numbers alone, but from uncertainty and lack of emotional security. Many people quietly hope money problems will resolve themselves without direct attention or structure. Unfortunately, avoidance almost always turns manageable stress into chronic anxiety over time. The moment something unexpected happens, that buried anxiety quickly rises to the surface. Medical bills, car repairs, or job uncertainty suddenly feel overwhelming, even if the costs are moderate. At that point, people often blame themselves for feeling weak or irresponsible. In truth, they were never taught to acknowledge money as an emotional factor, not just a math problem. Money interacts directly with our nervous system, especially when safety feels uncertain. When finances feel unstable, the body stays alert, tense, and constantly preparing for threat. That stress slowly leaks into relationships, work performance, and self-confidence. This is why conversations about money often feel heavier than conversations about other life topics. Money forces us to confront vulnerability, limits, and uncomfortable truths about control. Avoiding those truths may feel easier in the short term, but it rarely leads to peace. Admitting money matters is not a failure of character. It is a step toward clarity. Clarity allows people to make calmer decisions instead of reactive, fear-driven choices. And that shift alone can begin changing how money feels in everyday life. To understand why money feels so heavy, we first need to examine how society teaches us to talk about it. From childhood, many people learn that discussing money openly is awkward, impolite, or something best avoided entirely. In American culture especially, money conversations are often seen as uncomfortable, personal, or emotionally inappropriate. Saying money is not important sounds mature, ethical, and socially safe in most everyday conversations. But beneath that phrase usually lives fear, uncertainty, and unresolved financial pressure quietly shaping behavior. People rarely admit money matters because they fear being judged, misunderstood, or seen as morally lacking. Admitting money matters can feel like admitting weakness in a culture that celebrates independence and self-sufficiency. So many people suppress those feelings and continue functioning, smiling, and meeting responsibilities on the surface. They show up to work, pay bills, and maintain appearances while internal stress continues building silently. Over time, that unspoken pressure begins influencing decisions in ways most people never consciously notice. Career choices slowly shift towards security and fear avoidance rather than curiosity or long-term fulfillment. Relationships feel strained when financial limitations exist but remain unspoken and emotionally unresolved. Even simple daily decisions start carrying hidden emotional weight when money feels uncertain in the background. This creates a strange reality where money controls life while being publicly dismissed as unimportant. The more people deny money's importance, the more power it quietly gains over their emotional state. This pattern is not personal failure, but a predictable psychological response to ongoing uncertainty. When resources feel unstable, the brain prioritizes survival and safety over clarity and long-term planning. That survival mode makes calm thinking, patience, and strategic decision-making much harder to access. Many people remain in this state for years without realizing how deeply it affects their lives. They assume constant tension is normal adulthood, rather than a signal of unmet financial security needs. Financial stress becomes so familiar that people stop questioning why it feels ever present. Instead, they quietly adapt their lives around it, lowering expectations and accepting worry as normal. This explains why income increases alone rarely eliminate financial anxiety for most households. Without emotional clarity, higher income often brings higher expectations, obligations, and new pressures. People earn more money yet still feel one unexpected event away from losing stability. Recent national surveys show many households cannot comfortably handle moderate, unexpected financial emergencies. This reality quietly affects millions of people, regardless of education level or professional success. The stress often comes less from current hardship and more from fear of future instability. Fear keeps the nervous system alert, even during moments meant for rest and recovery. That constant alertness drains energy and slowly erodes emotional resilience over time. Eventually, people begin reacting emotionally to money instead of managing it intentionally. Decisions become short-term, defensive, and focused on immediate relief rather than long-term stability. This pattern explains why some people overspend while others avoid finances entirely. Both behaviors stem from the same root, an attempt to escape uncomfortable emotional pressure. Society rarely frames money stress as an emotional experience, which deepens confusion for many people. Instead, people are told to budget harder or earn more without addressing emotional overwhelm. That advice often fails because it ignores how fear disrupts decision-making and focus. When fear dominates, even well-designed financial tools can feel overwhelming or ineffective. This leaves people blaming themselves rather than questioning the framework they were taught. Self-blame increases shame, which pushes honest money conversations even deeper underground. The cycle continues quietly, reinforced by silence, cultural expectations, and internalized guilt. Breaking this cycle begins with a simple but deeply uncomfortable admission. Money matters because it directly influences how safe and stable our lives feel. Acknowledging this truth does not make someone greedy, shallow, or morally compromised. It makes them honest about the conditions required for emotional and mental stability. Safety is not luxury, it is the foundation that supports calm thinking and healthy choices. Without safety, people operate from fear, even when their lives appear functional externally. Recognizing this allows people to stop fighting themselves internally over money. Instead of shame, they can approach finances with curiosity, clarity, and self-compassion. That internal shift transforms money from a source of fear into a manageable part of life. One of the biggest misunderstandings about money is believing it exists only to buy pleasure or status. For most people, money is not about luxury, it is about reducing fear and creating breathing room. Money's real power comes from what it prevents: panic, desperation, and the feeling of being trapped. When people lack financial buffer, every problem feels larger, heavier, and emotionally overwhelming. A small, unexpected expense can suddenly feel like a threat to one's entire sense of stability. This reaction is not weakness, it is how the human nervous system responds to uncertainty. The body interprets financial instability as danger, even when the mind tries to stay logical. That is why money stress often shows up physically, Tight chests, shallow breathing, restless sleep. People rarely connect these symptoms to finances, assuming stress comes from work or relationships. In reality, money often sits quietly underneath those pressures, amplifying everything else. This is why money can affect happiness indirectly without ever guaranteeing happiness itself. Money does not create joy, but it removes many barriers that block peace and emotional regulation. Think of money less as a reward and more as a stabilizing force in daily life. Like oxygen, money fades into the background when present, but dominates attention when missing. No one wakes up grateful for oxygen, but everyone panics when it becomes scarce. Financial security works the same way, invisible when sufficient, overwhelming when absent. This perspective explains why people with similar incomes can feel completely different emotionally. One person feels calm, while another feels constant pressure, despite earning similar amounts. The difference is rarely income alone, but access to safety, buffer, and predictability. Buffer changes how the brain processes problems, turning threats into manageable inconveniences. With buffer, unexpected expenses feel annoying, not catastrophic or life-disrupting. Without buffer, even small disruptions trigger fear, urgency, and reactive decision-making. This is why financial advice focused only on numbers often fails to help people emotionally. Numbers matter, but emotions determine how people actually behave around those numbers. Ignoring emotions leads to plans that look good on paper but collapse under real pressure. True financial stability begins when people design systems that support emotional calm. Calm allows better thinking, better choices, and more consistent long-term behavior. This does not require wealth. It requires honesty about what makes you feel safe. Safety looks different for everyone depending on background, responsibilities, and experiences. For some, safety means emergency savings. For others, it means predictable income or lower fixed costs. The common thread is not luxury, but reduced uncertainty and increased control. Control does not mean controlling everything. It means having options when things go wrong. Options are what money quietly buys: time, flexibility, and room to choose wisely. Without options, people feel forced into decisions they later regret. Feeling forced increases resentment, stress, and emotional exhaustion over time. Many people confuse this exhaustion with laziness or lack of discipline. In reality, constant financial pressure drains cognitive and emotional energy daily. That drain makes long-term planning feel impossible, even when people understand its importance. This is why compassion matters when talking about money, not judgment or moralizing. People are not bad with money, they are often overwhelmed by unresolved fear. Once fear is acknowledged, clarity begins to replace avoidance. Clarity allows people to see money as a tool rather than a constant threat. Tools feel empowering, threats feel paralyzing, even when they look similar externally. This mental shift changes how people approach budgeting, saving, and spending decisions. Instead of reacting emotionally, they respond intentionally with greater self-trust. Self-trust reduces anxiety because decisions feel aligned rather than rushed or defensive. Over time, this alignment creates consistency, which matters more than perfection. Consistency slowly rebuilds confidence in one's ability to handle financial challenges. Confidence lowers stress, even before income or net worth changes significantly. That is how money begins to feel supportive instead of threatening in everyday life. Eventually, many people realize their stress was never truly about money, but about constantly feeling unsafe beneath daily routines. That quiet sense of unsafety slowly trains the brain to stay alert, defensive, and exhausted most of the time. When the brain stays in survival mode, long-term thinking fades and only short-term coping remains. Life then becomes about avoiding mistakes instead of moving toward anything meaningful or fulfilling. Financial pressure does not need to be extreme to create this effect. It only needs to feel unpredictable. Unpredictability is what turns money into a psychological threat rather than a practical tool. People say money is not important because admitting otherwise feels emotionally exposing and destabilizing. Admitting money matters forces people to face how dependent safety actually is on financial margin. That realization challenges identity, not a pride, and the comforting belief that effort alone guarantees stability. So many people choose denial, not because they are dishonest, but because fear feels safer than truth. Fear often hides behind responsibility, realism, and phrases like "this is just how life works." Over time, those beliefs quietly shape careers, relationships, and daily decisions without conscious awareness. People stay in situations that drain them because financial uncertainty makes change feel dangerous. What looks like contentment from the outside is often quiet resignation built from prolonged pressure. Resignation slowly shrinks curiosity, ambition, and the belief that different choices are possible. This shrinking is not laziness or weakness, it is adaptation to years of emotional and financial strain. Adapting helps people survive, but it also teaches them to carry everything alone without complaint. Carrying everything alone eventually costs clarity, emotional energy, and trust in oneself. Many people watching this recognize that exhaustion instantly, even if they never named it before. Naming it honestly is the first step toward change, not through money itself, but through awareness. Awareness changes how people see their past decisions, not with blame, but with a clearer understanding of pressure. Understanding reveals that many choices were reasonable responses to uncertainty, not personal flaws or lack of discipline. This realization softens self-judgment and creates emotional space for more thoughtful future decisions. With emotional space, people begin separating their worth from their financial situation. That separation is critical because shame clouds judgment and keeps people stuck in reactive patterns. When shame loosens, curiosity quietly returns, allowing people to ask better questions about their lives. Better questions lead to more intentional choices, even when resources remain limited. Intentional choices feel empowering because they restore a sense of agency over everyday decisions. Agency does not require abundance, it requires clarity about what truly supports well-being. Clarity helps people prioritize stability over appearances and sustainability over short-term comfort. These priorities often simplify life rather than complicating it with constant comparison. Comparison fades when people feel grounded in their own needs and limits. Grounded people make calmer financial decisions because they are not reacting to external pressure. Calm decisions reduce stress even before financial circumstances noticeably improve. Over time, reduced stress improves focus, relationships, and emotional resilience. This creates a positive feedback loop where clarity supports stability and stability supports clarity. Progress then feels steady rather than fragile, even when setbacks inevitably appear. Setbacks no longer feel catastrophic, but like manageable challenges within a broader context. This shift changes how money fits into life, from constant threat to manageable responsibility. And that change allows people to move forward with honesty, patience, and a quieter sense of control. If this conversation resonates, it may be because you have been carrying financial pressure quietly for a long time. Carrying that pressure does not mean you failed, it means you kept going without enough support. Many strong people survive silently, even while feeling constantly tense, uncertain, or emotionally exhausted. You are not broken for feeling this way, you are responding honestly to a difficult reality. Money matters not because it defines worth, but because it shapes how safe life feels day to day. Feeling safer allows people to think clearly, choose patiently, and treat themselves with compassion. If you know someone who feels overwhelmed by money, this message might help them feel less alone. Sharing this video is not advice or judgment, it is a quiet way of saying, I understand you. Sometimes being understood is the first step toward meaningful change. If calmer conversations about money help you breathe easier, stay connected here for more like this. Say,